All right, and off we go. So, heredity. This is a big topic in biology. You would spend a lot of time on this in a regular biology class. This is probably one of the most memorable things from biology based on when I asked you guys that warm-up question a while back about what's the thing you remember most or like or dislike. This came up a lot. So, this is heredity. It has to do with these Punnett squares, which you can see in the picture. All right, so real quick, I'm just gonna, you don't have to write anything down about Gregor Mendel, but I just want to tell you about him. He's kind of considered the father of heredity and genetics. He did a lot of experiments on plants and came to find out a lot of this information based on his study with plants, responsible for the laws governing inheritance and traits. He was back in the 1800s, so this is a long time ago. He thought that physical traits were inherited as particles. He was close, but they were actually didn't know that these particles were chromosomes and DNA. So even though he didn't come up with like the modern day like terminology, but he got this started going down the path towards this information. So common scientists today coined these terms of chromosomes and DNA, but he was in the ballpark. He was onto this stuff. So now we have more technology and better systems for doing the research that he started. Okay, so these are some pretty key terms here. I'm going to be using these a lot, so they're very, very important to know. And you're going to write these down in your notes. All right, a trait is where we're going to start. So if I say a trait, if you know what that means, you might have used that already in your everyday life. They traits you want in friends are loyal, supportive, fun. Those are like good traits to have in friends. So that's similar to traits in genetics, as it's a characteristic that can be passed from a parent to an offspring. So we're talking about offspring as like, where your parents made you. You're an offspring of your parents. I'm an offspring of my parents. I have a son. He is my offspring. It's kind of a weird word to talk about, but you can also think about it as like kids or children in the terms of humans. Heredity is the passing of these traits from the parent to the offspring. So if you inherit, say you inherit your eye color from your parents, you inherit your metabolism, your height, whether your ear is attached or not to your base of your skull. I'll show you what that is later. That's what heredity is. It's passing the traits. Genetics is the study of this heredity. So genetics is the study of how all this stuff gets passed on. We learned last week that chromosomes are the bundles of DNA that contain genes. So we talked about last week how genes are transcribed and translated when you are being made in your mother's womb. A lot of these genes are wrapped up in the chromosomes that are being followed like directions to baking a cake, to bake you. So they're using the instructions they got from your mom and your dad's DNA to create you and everything that you are. I'll keep this up on the screen for another couple seconds because we need to move on, but this is what you should have written down. Trait, heredity, genetics, and chromosomes. I'll be using trait and heredity a lot today. So those will be important that you understand. All right. So up next, we have these designer genes. So these are how the genes are designed and how we talk about them. Again, I will be using dominant and recessive basically on every slide I talk about from here on out. So make sure you understand these. So, alleles are the forms or a version of a gene. All right, so a dominant is an allele. A recessive is an allele. 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 It's two different versions of a gene. So a dominant version is the stronger of the two genes. It will dominate the recessive version. That's why it's called a dominant. If you're dominant at a sport or a video game or making songs, then you will dominate everybody else. You will be better than that one. Now, it's not saying that these genes are better, but they will present themselves more often than the recessive. Recessive is a gene that shows up less often. So it is hidden by the dominant version. So when dominant and recessive genes are paired together, the dominant gene will show itself, meaning that trait, remember I talked about what a trait is, last slide, that trait will show itself. That can be eye color, it can be height, it can be hair, like haircut style, it can be your skin tone, it can be your metabolism, it can be a lot of different things. So dominant is the stronger of the two. It's marked by a capital letter. The recessive is the weaker of the two, and it's marked by a lowercase letter. Recessive traits can still be expressed or shown if they are paired with another recessive gene or allele. All right. All right, so the next couple slides, I have examples. I have examples on the next couple slides. All right, so up next, so this is what a dominant allele looks like. On these chromosomes over here, you have an uppercase B, which is the dominant allele, paired with a lowercase b, which is a recessive allele. The allele is always expressed, which means shown. It shows up in you. All right, it cannot be masked by another allele. So a very common one is eye color. So your eye color, brown. You probably know this already, that brown eyes are more common than blue eyes or other colors of eyes. Brown eye is the most common. Now, that is a dominant allele. When it is paired with a recessive allele, you will have a brown eye color. So this is a dominant allele situation. A recessive one would be if you have two of these recessive genes or alleles. When those are paired together, they will be expressed in that eye color. So even though blue eye color is not as common, if you have two parents that have blue eyes, the chance of you having blue eyes is very high because they both have these recessive alleles paired together to show off a dominant allele. I'm sorry, a recessive trait. So recessive is less common, but they're still possible to be shown. All right, now genotype. All right, this is something you write down. Genotype is a gene combination for a trait. If you, I'm gonna be saying genotype a lot, and I remember from when I was learning this, I got genotype and the next thing that's coming up, phenotype confused a lot. I'll teach you a way to keep them separated in a minute when we get to the next slide. So a genotype is a gene combination like RR or capital R, lowercase r, or two lowercase r's. It's like the pairing of the dominant and recessive genes is the genotype. So you can think of it as gene type. RR, little r, stuff like that. another couple seconds. Okay, a phenotype. Phenotype is a physical feature resulting from a genotype. So the phenotype is a physical thing. It's red flowers, brown eyes, blue eyes, white flowers, long arms, short leaves, wide leaves, patterns. It could be patterns on your dog or cat's coat, on their fur. Those are phenotypes. Phenotype is a physical representation. That's how I always remember what the difference is. Phenotype starts with a P, and so does physical. So it's the physical thing. It's tangible. It's seeable. It's the physical property that shows up. The genotype is like the recipe for it. So the genotype is the letter combination, and the phenotype is the physical feature resulting from the genotype. EG in your notes just means like it means like an example. So I put an example in there for you guys to kind of understand what the difference is, because I'm be talking about genotype and phenotype a lot too. Okay, we're about halfway through. How are we doing? Post the link in there. I see a few more people joined. All right. So again, there's nothing on here to write down, but I just wanted to show you an example again. Genotype of alleles, like the R in a rose, the color of the rose. This is something, if you go into the field of uh, horticulture and growing plants, you can work for plant gardens that grow these things. This is actually pretty important to come up with different colors of flowers. They mix the different types of alleles to code for these ones, and they can actually genetically weed out different colors. So R would be like a red flower, and a small r would be a yellow flower. The R is dominant over the yellow. So based on these combinations, the double capital R would be red. Since the lowercase r is paired with a uppercase R in this middle one, the outcome, the phenotype will still be red. The only time it'll be yellow is if it's paired with another recessive one, which will give the phenotype or the physical representation of yellow. All right. 2-question quiz. Let's see how we're doing. So what's the following, click on the one that's an example of a genotype, and then the next one I'm going to have a similar question. So go ahead and answer these real quick. You guys are doing a great job right now. No one's missed a question. All right, so everyone got it right. So which is the example of a genotype? Gene is the key word there. It's the letters, so that would be this one. Next up, which is a phenotype. Remember, phenotypes are physical examples because of this P for physical. So you can physically see or feel yellow feathers. So that would be correct in that one. Everybody got it right. Great work, guys. All right, so in the genotypes, we can talk about them quicker if we talk about them being homozygous or heterozygous. Now, these are definitions you're going to need to write down. So, homozygous is a gene combination involving two dominant or two recessives. That means they're matching. So, in the example I have over here, all right, big R, capital R's, or lowercase r's, they're the same. That's called a homozygous type. A heterozygous type is a gene combination of one dominant and one recessive allele in any order. So that's what it looks like over here, big R, little r. So that's what heterozygous and homozygous mean. You're going to need to know this because they're going to ask you questions on the end of the week exam over this stuff and other stuff I'll get to later. They're going to say a homozygous mother pairs with a heterozygous father. What's the outcome going to be? So it's going to just say that it's homozygous or heterozygous, and it's going to assume that you know what that means. That's a key word in order to figure out Punnett squares, which I'm sure you've heard of before, and we're going to talk about later today. All right, so a homozygous, one more time, is a gene combination involving two dominant or two recessive genes or alleles. A heterozygous is a gene combination with one dominant and one recessive gene or allele. All right, so question. Which of the following genotypes is heterozygous? Which one is heterozygous, A or B? All right, excellent. Everyone got it right. Heterozygous means opposite. So there's an uppercase and a lowercase e there. And you guys got them all right. So here's an example. So for eye color, you'd have two capital B's or two lowercase b's. So this would code for brown eyes, and this would code for blue eyes. The prefix homo means the same. Okay, you can probably think of other words that have that in there. It means the same. Heterozygous means hetero means other. So other alleles. All right, we're at Punnett squares. I really, really hope this is not new to anybody because it'll allow me to go faster. And with these, practice is key. So the more you practice with these, the easier they become and the better off you will be. All right, so when you're practicing these Punnett squares, you're going to have male and female alleles in pairs, and each one is going to donate its allele to the square in the same column and or row. We have two types, a monohybrid cross and a dihybrid cross. Oops, I want to oops. Don't click on that. That's for, I didn't know that was a link. All right, so the monohybrid cross, mono means one, the cross involving a single trait, like flower color. A dihybrid cross can be more than one trait. So it can be like flower color, plant height. It can be eye color and height. It could be any two traits involved. So a dihybrid cross does two traits, monohybrid does one trait. And the results, all right, so inheritable factors or genes are responsible for all the heritable characteristics. Phenotype is based on genotype. All right, so there's some of those vocab words thrown at you. Phenotype is based on the genotype. So the physical representation is based on the makeup of the letters. So the arrangement of the alleles. So the arrangement of the alleles will tell you the characteristics that it'll have. Each trait gets one in these crosses. One trait comes from the mother, and one comes from the father. In a dihybrid cross, all right, it tracks the inheritance of two traits. So the first one, the monohybrid, only does one trait. The dihybrid does two traits. So in the inheritance of two traits is what's tracked in the dihybrid cross. Each pair segregates or separates independently. And we're going to practice this stuff later. So I understand like we're just filling in the words right now, but we're going to practice all this later. All right, so that big box that's down there on the right, all right, I'm going to show you how to do that. So in dihybrid, you're tracking two traits. And each pair segregates or separates independently. That's on its own. They're not paired or matched or copied and pasted. It's each one is independent of the other. Anyone need any more time on this one? You're about to go into some practice. All right, this first one is a real life one that actually happened. So we're going to start with monohybrid crosses, Punnett squares. All right, and this one is a little personal. So first up, those are my parents. So we are going to be practicing on my family. So This is my mom and my dad. Okay. When we talked about monohybrid crosses, the monohybrid cross gets one set of traits from each parent. So my dad has brown eyes, so he is giving these traits to the offspring. My mom she has blue eyes, so that means she has 2 recessive alleles. All right. So my dad's brown eye, this one is dominant, and this one is recessive. And I know that this one is recessive because I have blue eyes. So the only way that I could have blue eyes is if my dad had a recessive blue eye allele. So when you do these, each trait, I see you guys fill them in. All right, Levi, very good. All right, you just fill them in. So the brown gets filled in here, and here, and then blue gets filled in here, and here, and then here, and here. So that's so then you can now calculate what the percentage chance of having a child with brown and blue eyes are. So, for example, I wound up over here. All right. So 2 out of the 4 are blue eyes. And there's a 2 out of 4 chance over here that they'll be brown eyes. All right. And that equals 50% for those of you who are math studs. And same with over here. There's a 50% chance over there. And that's exactly what happened. All right, I see a lot of you guys filled in this chart. Remember, this B drops down in the column. So on the top, it gives 1 letter to each column, and on the sides, it gives 1 letter to each row. So you should have 2 lowercase b's in each of these boxes, and a lowercase and an uppercase in these 2 boxes. So there's a 50-50 chance that my parents would have kids with brown eyes and blue eyes. And now this resets every time a kid is born. So it's not like if they had 2 brown-eyed kids, then the next one would have to be blue eyes. It's every time it's like a roll of the dice, flip of the coin. It's random, right? And that's exactly what happened. So there's me on the right. I have blue eyes, 50% chance. My older brother has brown eyes, and my younger brother has brown eyes. So they hit on the other 50% chance. So I have blue eyes. I'm the only one in my family, other than my mom, that has blue eyes. Both my brothers have brown eyes.
I personally think it's unfair that you got the biggest picture on that.
I do, because this side represents me having that 50% in each one of those boxes. And I just wanted to put them in there because they wound up representing each one of these boxes. That's why my picture is bigger.
All right.
All right, so here is an example question that you will see later. All right, so you gotta click on this picture up here in the corner. All right, so the question is asking you, in horses with the gene for white hair, which is dominant, uppercase W, and the gene with non-white hair, lowercase w. A horse with a genotype WW was crossed with a genotype WW. So you have 2 uppercase, 2 lowercase. So you have here's where they could have also said this and meant the same thing. They could have also said a horse with a homozygous dominant. That means homozygous means 2 of the same. So that means you would have dominant traits, which is the capital W. So that means homozygous, these are the same. Dominant, they're capital letters. Over here, was homozygous but recessive. That means that there's two genes, but two lowercase genes. So they could have made this problem a little harder if they just used those words, but it would have meant the same thing. So what is the fraction of offspring that would have white hair? So if you do the cross, right, you would get a W, an uppercase, a dominant W, and a recessive W in this box, a dominant W and a recessive in this box, dominant recessive in this box, dominant recessive in this box. So remember, when two genes are paired together, the dominant allele will show the phenotype. So in every box, you'll see an uppercase W. Therefore, all of these horses will have white hair. So the correct answer is D, all. It looks like most of you guys got that one right. All right, so let's draw it out. This is going to go in your notes. I put this up here so that you could see what I was talking about. So you got white hair up there. So remember, this will drop down into at least one in every box. Okay, so that means I'm going to put a capital W here and a capital W here. Capital W here, capital W here. And these ones will get transferred into each box as well. So you'll get a lowercase w here, lowercase w here, lowercase there, lowercase here. So again, 4 out of the 4 boxes. So there are the WW shows up 0 times. So that means all the other cases will have white hair. So white hair would either be this allele combination or this genotype. And this one shows up every time, so it's going to be 100%. Or all of them. All right, so last one is the dihybrid cross. This one takes a little bit more time, but is doable just the same. All right. So I always start with the one trait. So for example, this could be, I'm trying to think of a good example. With could be a plant that is tall and has wide leaves. And then this one could be a plant that is tall and has short leaves. And then this would be short plant with wide leaves. So it's 2 traits at a time. So first you pair the matching alleles. So this one will get paired with this one. And then you would have this allele get paired with this allele. So it's like you're doing 2 separate crosses in one box. So if I did like a little, separated them like this. So over here, I would have big H and big H there. So it'd be HH. And then you have dominant L's too. So that's how that would work. And then down here, you would have dominant H's, homozygous, dominant. And then you would have a heterozygous pairing over here. So it'd be a big L and a little L. And then you keep going. So this one has a homozygous or heterozygous there. And then you have a homozygous here. And then I'm going to do another one. So this is going to be capital H here, paired with a lowercase h. And then you do the L's, uppercase H, lowercase h. These ones take a little bit more time, but they are doable. So, for example, if I took, let's look at this one right here. All right. So I said H's was the height of the plant. H, big H equals tall. Little h equals short. Big L equals large leaves. And little L equals short leaves, small leaves. So if I'm keeping this in mind, this plant right here would be this pairing for height, all right, would be tall because you have a heterozygous and that would eliminate this one. So it'll be a tall plant. And now let's look at the leaf size. So the leaf size would be big L, big L. So it would have two large leaves. So it would have large leaves. So leaves will be large. So after you finish the whole thing, you can make combinations of each one and then come up with the percentages that are available for each. But for the questions you will see in the end of the week assessment, it's asking you which pairings would possibly have the phenotype that would have, and then they'll give you an example. All right. So that's all I got for you today. Make sure your notes are done. We're going to practice these tomorrow more. From what I can see and what you guys showed me today, the group that was in class today did a good job with the Punnett squares, and looks like we can, and you can probably take that out into the dihybrid crosses as well. But we will be going over this more this week. So if you don't understand it, don't worry. We're going to practice tomorrow. Okay. So that's all I got for you today. Make sure you turn your notes in on Schoology. One announcement I will make is this is the last week of summer school. So this is the last week. So all my assignments, every assignment in this class is due this Friday at 5 p.m. That's when the grade book closes. So I can't, even if you submit something to me later than 5 p.m. on Friday, I graded it and I put it in the grade book, it wouldn't show up. So make sure you have everything to me by Friday at 5. I'm going to give you guys on Thursday a day to kind of make up work and ask me questions. But on Friday, we will have class. It'll be kind of like your end of the class assessment. So you're going to have a longer assessment than normal, but I would say you guys are more than ready for it. So we're gonna do like a review on Thursday and give you guys some time to do assignments on Thursday as well. So Thursday will be like a review day, but just make sure that you have all your stuff turned in and completed this week. I graded all last week, so everything up through today should be updated. All right, you guys are free to go. If you have any questions, stick around and let me know.
Can I do my notes when I get back from work and then turn it in?
Yeah.
All right, bet. I gotta go.
All right. No problem. All right, see you later.